Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's show. Super excited to be here. Joe, I'm glad you're here as
Hey,
well.
How are you? I got my drink. I'm ready.
You're all set?
Yeah.
And you got your booster seat?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Because I'm so short, right? Yeah, I got my main shirt on this time. Because that's what I was right now.
Yep. So
I'm
I'm excited about today's show. Today is kind of
psyched.
something you and I haven't talked about on the show yet.
Yeah, I actually might be quiet tonight while I'm listening.
Listening and taking notes? No.
Yeah.
No, you mean I can't use my Joe Soapbox banner?
You can. I got my sign ready. We'll talk about orbs, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. We can
Orbs
bring
and
that up.
cat balls are always good for discussion.
Oh, and it's funny too because I was talking to getting ready to hopefully switch over to another network, so we might be on a bigger and better network again, like we were before when we were on WLTK. And part of the requirement is going to be they need to have a banner that says "Welcome to Joe's Soapbox" that goes across the bottom when you go off on your rants.
Never gonna let me live off that. Well, I mean, but you gotta admit my rants are pretty good.
They are. They're educational.
I always have a point. Well,
exactly.
I always have a point, but sometimes I don't know when to shut up. That's what my wife says.
You have a point. We have to go to spot A, B, C, D, Z, X before we get to to the point.
Yeah, Jojo the Wild Circus Monkey. I'm all over the place.
Exactly. But anyway, I'm going to bring on our special guest in just a moment. But real quick, everybody, thank you for watching the show tonight. And if you're new to the show, you can always catch us on Passport to the Paranormal on Facebook. And we go live every other Wednesday right now. Things may change on Passport to the Paranormal's Facebook page, Parapost Network, and Parallax. And then I also upload it to my YouTube channel within 24 to 48 hours. And hopefully with the changeover, we'll get our own YouTube channel up and running with that as well. So stay tuned for some exciting news coming forward. And before I babble on too long or Joe goes off on a topic and we don't bring her in, let's bring in Philomena. Philomena, welcome to the show today.
Hi,
hello. Thank you so much for having me, folks. Thank you.
I couldn't wait to have you. I'm
happy to be here.
I'm ready to go.
So everybody ready for spring?
Yes. It's been cold here.
Shockingly, it's going to snow. It's going to snow in the next couple of days, possibly here.
Oh, you're in New York, aren't you, Joe?
New England is crazy.
I'm in Portland, Oregon, so every 5 minutes the weather changes. It was snowing 2 weeks ago, and now we have beautiful spring weather, and it's expected to maybe snow again on Saturday. So that's the PNW for you.
Oh, I was
no, I'm in Portland, Oregon. Yeah.
Or Nevada.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Nevada.
Yeah. Yeah, Nevada.
I'm a New Englander, so we say Nevada, I guess.
It's okay.
I'm mistaken. I thought you were in Nevada. Okay.
Well, no, Portland, Oregon. Yeah.
Make a note of that.
Oops. Somewhere. Oh, sorry. That was supposed to go up later. I'm getting my stuff up. Sorry.
You're fine.
That's what I get for doing stuff behind the scenes.
That's all right.
I'm trying to make my screen bigger, but then I lose the comments.
Oh, no. I'll let you know when there's comments, Joe. It's pretty quiet. So far, all you have is my comments. Welcome to the show. And then Parallax, our Parapost, commented about sending stars.
Oh, they're out there. They're just not saying anything.
I did put an advert on TikTok, and so I'm hoping even if folks don't catch the show live, they can listen to the recording, because I wouldn't want them to miss out on you guys, what you guys have to say. So,
well, I'm the one that keeps them away.
A comedy show at night.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of fun, but when it's time to get serious, like the topic we're going to talk about, I'm in.
Well, I think I remember something that Father Michael? He was very famous. I'm so sorry, Father. I can't remember your name, but he was a famous exorcist. I'm sure you know who he is, Joe. And he used to say, yes. And he used to say that the best way to fight the devil was with laughter. And I think that is really true when you're dealing with the paranormal, the supernatural, or the unknown, is you have to have a certain amount of levity. You have to be willing to say, yes, this is a frightening, disturbing, intimidating topic, but we're going to occasionally make a a joke or something, just so that we don't get too caught up in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
Evil can't seem to handle positive energy, and that's the best way to fight it, is have a laugh once in a while.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of truth to that statement.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep. Okay, well, I know I've had you on my other show that I air on Tuesday mornings, and it's been a while. And even though we do have some of the followers from that show come over to this show, can you kind of just let everybody know who you are and why the Hatman?
Sure. So my name's Philomena. I'm from the Pacific Northwest, Portland, Oregon. And I had a personal encounter. My sister and I had one with the Hatman about 30 years ago. Now, this was before the advent of social media or the internet. This was not a popular topic. It wasn't really even discussed on the radio until 1996, when author Rosemary Ellen Guiley went on the Art Bell Coast to Coast AM program and started discussing shadow people and the Hatman. Well, the term Hatman was coined by author Heidi Hollis when she wrote several of her books about the topic as well. And since the advent of social media and the internet, more people have been able to speak out and share their experiences with this. This is a phenomenon that's been happening worldwide. The reason I got involved was directly because of my own personal experience with my sister. And about 3 years ago, I was doing hospice work during COVID in the Ceylon Islands. And I had one of my patients have a Hatman sighting. This was a gentleman who was a survivor, one of the last few survivors. He was a child during World War II, a Jew. And he was one of the last few survivors of the camps. This was a very, very good man. I personally can think of no reason why someone like him should have had an encounter with this entity, but he did. And after he passed away and I returned to the mainland, I started thinking about this and recounting my own experience with my sister. We went on TikTok and I started asking people, had they had encounters, what their experience was. And I was also at the same time creating videos with medical research information about Rh negative blood type, which is a rare blood type that about 9 to 15% of the world's population has, including myself. And there are some different biological traits with that. And what I noticed in the thousands of conversations that we were beginning to have on TikTok over the span of 3 years was that a lot of people have seen this entity. A lot of people. And a lot of them happen to be Rh negative blood type, which is pretty weird if you think about that, about the rarity of that. So it kind of got me started down this bunny trail of things. And then Lorraine Warren, of all people, made her entrance. And I want to mention the lady because she really led me to Joe Franke and to you. This is true. Mm-hmm. I was minding my own business with my little channels on TikTok. And I had a dream that I was sitting at a coffee table in a little house, and there were these yellow and black checked curtains in this little window and this little brown table with like 3 or 4 chairs around it. And there was this little lady in high heels, and she was just dressed to the nines. Her little hair was up, and she had her back to me, and she was over by the coffee pot. And she goes, "Oh, honey, grab yourself a cup of coffee. I'll grab us a piece of pie. We'll sit down and we'll talk." And I look around. I have no idea where I'm at. And she turns around, and I'm like, excuse my language, holy shit, that's Lorraine Warren. The only reason I know who that was because of her, movies and television and books. And she goes, "Oh, yeah." She goes, "I'm going to get you the help you need. Don't you worry. I'll get you to the right people. Come and tell me your story." And in my dream, I was telling her about this experience, and she said, "You need to talk about this. You need to talk about this." I woke up, thought that was just the craziest dream. And 3 weeks later, I happened to be on the internet, and a gentleman by the name of Pastor Tim Brown of the Hatman Project was looking for a volunteer for his website. And so I volunteered. And he and I started exchanging some information. And he said, "I think you really need to create a project about this from your perspective," because he is a Christian pastor. So he has a particular narrative perception of what he thinks is going on, which is just fine. My viewpoint tends to be a little bit more extended in terms of possibility. And so he encouraged me to do this. And that's why we created Project Umbra. It's the undefined, multidimensional, paranormal, RH-related activity. I've got surveys. I created a survey, the first of its kind, to try to have people help quantify their experiences in terms of data points. You know, did you see these particular features? Were you in, you know, what was the environment, you know, physically? Things like this, because if you think of this being in terms of being an apex predator, it has patterns, it has behaviors. And just like anything else, if we understand what the profile is, we can hunt it. We can find out if there's a way to protect ourselves and children from being exposed to this thing. In the course of breaking down the data that I was receiving on these surveys, and I've got almost 200 of them now, some very, very disturbing patterns have emerged. And that's where we're at now. So through Lorraine Warren, who I give full credit to, I believe that she got me in touch with Pastor Tim Brown. And while I was working for him, I met the incredible Frances McNeil, who works for the Warren Foundation for Paranormal Research, who introduced me to Mr. Joe Franke. And here we are. So I'm sorry for going off, but that's how it all happened. It was just meant to be.
Great to hear how it all started. And you know, I was writing some questions now as you were talking, but it's fascinating. Sure. You said you had over 200 surveys. Have you had a chance to dissect them all and find out if there's any commonalities?
I have.
Shared traits, blood types. Are they all people that have the same blood type, or just
no?
A mixed
so
bag?
It's so there is probably in the surveys that I've got, probably 30% of them are Rh negative, which is, if you consider how small a sampling that is, that's incredible.
30% you know, when you're of the 200, when only 9 to 15% of the world's population is that?
Yeah,
that's pretty amazing.
It really kind of is. Yeah. Now this can be attributed to the fact that I was advertising the survey through my TikTok program, which also had people who were interested in that information. But the bottom line is that there are very definable commonality data points in what people are seeing, when they're seeing it, how they're seeing it, and not only the event itself, but also their own personal backgrounds, their psychological profiles, their family histories, their genealogy. There's a lot of very disturbing things there. And so I am not a professional of any sort, and I don't claim to be, but you folks are. And so I feel very blessed to be able to speak with both of you about the project and to be able to work with Dr. Landon on it, because she's helping me figure out how to create our information for this in a way that is palatable to the public. I don't want to frighten people, but my goal is to educate them that this is a real phenomenon, that we do not know what it is. We don't know if it's paranormal. We don't know if it's multidimensional. We don't know if it's alien. We don't know what the hell it is, but we know that millions of people are seeing it, from every nationality, every race on earth, every age, every religion. It doesn't matter. And some of these people go missing and they are never seen again. So it's just very concerning. And so that's me. That's what I'm trying to do, is just bring light to a subject that I think has been ignored for a long time. And I'm just hoping that people maybe pay attention and are willing to work with me so that we can all kind of try to see if we can find some answers as to what we're dealing with.
Yep.
I mean, it's a fascinating topic. I was actually watching something the other night in preparation for the show. And for those of you who don't know, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard that Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy Krueger, was sparked by the Hatman.
Correct.
And he wears a fedora, I guess you call it. But I also said that in other countries, it's also seen as a man with a hat. Sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's taller, different types
Correct.
of hats.
Correct. Yeah, that's one of the things that the survey has revealed. There are, from what I know right now, 7 different versions of this thing. Now, what's interesting about this, Joe, is that particular versions of the Hatman are seen regionally. And sometimes there seems to be a time period involved. So are we dealing with some sort of time traveler? Are we dealing with a consciousness that presents itself according to the cultural perceptions of the person it's interacting with? You know, what's going on there? Because there's the Asian version, African version, European version. There's several different types. And so that's one of the other things that I'm trying to piece together as a researcher is how many versions of this thing are there? Because it may very well be that the cryptid hunters, the ghost hunters, the alien hunters, that we're all looking at the same critter, but it's presenting itself differently because it's obviously intelligent. It has an agenda. It's a more superior form of consciousness, and it has predator behavior. I mean, I'm not an expert, but I have thoughts, you know? So that's that's kind of what I see with it.
And do you feel that this has the ability to shapeshift into whatever kind of figure it wants to present itself as?
We saw it shapeshift. Would you like me to recount our experience? Maybe that would help you understand.
Sure. The floor is yours. Heather wants me to be quiet anyway, but I'm asking good questions.
You're an excellent interviewer, Joe. Don't worry about it. So is Heather. So this was about 2003, and I was 25 years old. My sister was 16, and we were living together in a 2-bedroom apartment here in Portland because within a 3-year span of time, our whole family had died. My mom, my dad, my grandmother, my husband, my only child, who was a baby at the time. Just all disconnected events, but they had all passed away. And so we were grieving, to say the least. And I mentioned this because a lot of times the phenomenon is discounted either due to a medical condition called sleep paralysis or to, drugs and alcohol. We were not into drugs and alcohol. We were not into the occult. We were not into anything. We were trying to survive our grief. I was working. She was going to school. I just want to make that very clear.
You were in a very vulnerable state.
We were, yeah, probably the worst of our entire life. We were really just trying to hang in there. And so we were in this apartment. We didn't know anybody in Portland, so we weren't socializing. And one night I was sound asleep. We both were. And our rooms were right next to each other. And at the end of our little hallway was a bathroom. And I always kept the bathroom light on. So my sister, who was younger than I was, if she needed to get up or if I needed to get up, we wouldn't disturb each other. And my sister and I always slept with our doors open so that if there was something going on or she needed me, I'd hear her. And her and I are very, very close. We're 10 years apart. So I've pretty much raised her most of her life. And our family, so my mother, my grandmother, my sister, and now her girls, we all have low-level form of telepathy. So it doesn't matter what time of day it is or how far apart we are. If something's going on, we're going to know, It's pretty common for Rh negatives, and a lot of people have had that experience. So we're just very bonded. And there's a reason I'm bringing this up. But anyway, we were sound asleep. And you both have kids, so you'll understand when I tell you that when a child says your name in a certain way, you know they're not fooling around. You absolutely know that there is something serious going on. Your instinct becomes very primitive as a parent, and you're running. You're trying to figure out what's going on. Well, I heard my sister call my name just once, and it woke me up out of a dead sleep. I had never heard her sound so terrified. And I was a merchant marine, so that means I worked on the rivers. transporting cargo and people up and down on steamboats. So I'm your girl in a bar fight. I'll pick up something heavy and beat that guy off. Don't you worry. But I'm not I'm not a professional fighter. I'm not a scrapper or anything like that. But I'm a capable woman. And living in Portland, especially after everything we've gone through, my instincts were pretty sharp. So I was instantly awake and running. And so I'm running down the hall at full tilt. And I hit the doorway where my sister's room is. And as I say, our doorways were wide open. And I'm telling you, I came around that doorway at full speed and I bounced off nothing. I bounced off nothing so hard, I got thrown back into the wall behind me so hard it took my breath out. I couldn't move. I was like Spider-Man plastered. And what I saw was this thing that it looked to be 8 to 10 feet tall. It had what looked to be a black fedora hat with a very wide brim and the typical, long black trench coat. This is all silhouette and shadow. The only thing you can see of this thing, I'm not shitting you, are glowing red eyes. I mean, Hollywood, I don't care what they've done. They have never made anything as frightening as this. Nothing. The malevolence, the evil, the absolute hatred and rage this thing had towards me and my sister, it was so tangible, you could almost touch it. It was the most overwhelming, I would have to say, a psychic assault that I've ever experienced. I could tell it was angry. It did not expect me to be there, and it was pissed. It had been interrupted, which makes a lot of sense because in 98% of the experiences people report with the Hatman, they are paralyzed. And we know, even from modern day technology, that certain EMF fields at certain rates can cause paralysis and other physiological effects. So it clearly has some ability to induce that condition on people.
Like
at any rate,
mania.
Yeah. So this thing looks at me and it crouches like it was expecting an attack and it hisses. And I'm stuck to the wall. And I look at my sister and, this thing was so black, it stood out from the darkness of the room. And I looked at my sister and I knew, Joe, Heather, we were dead. We were dead. This thing was not there to observe. We were dead. We just instantly knew it. I mean, and I'm describing it slowly, but this happened so damn fast. I just couldn't even respond. And it leaped. It jumped, or it appeared to jump through the air towards my sister, who was laying in bed on her back. She couldn't move. She was paralyzed. My baby sister is 6 feet tall. I'm 5'7". She is a capable girl as well, and she could not move. She was completely paralyzed. And all I can say is that I attribute it to love and to God's grace and to adrenaline. Like the mom picking the car up off the kid who gets run over. I just knew that if we were dead, we were going together. And I shoved off that back wall, and it was like pushing through solid air. And when I was going through the doorway, it looked to me like it had landed on top of her. And as I passed through the doorway, there was all of a sudden the most, out from a third party from off corner of the room, the most incredible, brilliant white light, like a nuclear bomb, went off in there. It was so bright. We were literally light blind for 20 minutes after this event. We were stumbling around. We could not see. We were blind. It exploded in the room. And the last sort of psychic exchange of information I had with this thing was, it was desperate to complete whatever it was there to do. But that light was greater. It was absolutely terrified. It was gone. The light was gone. And my sister and I just started screaming. I can't see. We're trying to flip on the light. And she told me later on that as that thing leaped on top of her and the light appeared, for just a moment, she saw the mirage of the Hatman facade fade away. And what she saw was a very small being, maybe 4 to 5 feet tall, that had no clothing on. It looked like clay skin, like if you were going to make a clay mold of something, and it was a grayish green. She said the eyes were consistent. They still glowed red. But this thing had a line for a mouth, no ears, just a hole, and absolutely no skin and no hair, and big claws. And she said it was extremely skinny, like it was almost emaciated, sort of like a golem from Lord of the Rings is what she described it as. So that's what she saw. And so that's why I say, it's definitely a shapeshifter. But that was our experience, and it haunted us. It really changed our perception of reality and what is possible and what is, what could actually be out there that most of us are just raised to believe is not true. And so when I created the survey and I started breaking down the information, and I realized some of the patterns that were happening, especially with the kids, I decided that, if nothing else, just getting the information out there, it might help somebody. It might help them feel like they're not crazy. They're not alone. There are other people that have gone through this. But what is really unusual, and I do want to mention this, is the fact that we were rescued. I don't even know why we were attacked in the first place, people. I have no idea why we were rescued. And in 98% of the cases of people who have experienced a Hatman, they've had multiple encounters and they've never been rescued. So I feel very privileged that we were. And I feel like maybe that obligates me to pursue this and see if I can't get other people involved to bring more light to whatever this phenomenon really is.
Yep. And so, we'll find the answers. Like I said, I have no problem going and hunting him. There's two locations. There's 2 locations here in Florida where he's been seen a lot.
Yeah.
And I have no problem going to those locations and calling him out. Not in a disrespectful way, but more of a, hey, I'm here, come talk to me type of, and try to get the answers.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It is a form of consciousness, whatever this thing is. It's intelligent. It has an agenda. I don't believe that this has ever been a human spirit. I don't think we're dealing with something that was ever human.
Well, even the description the sister gave, that's gray alien. That's like almost with that.
Right, and this is where I am the bridge. No. But this subject is a beautiful bridge between the 2 groups, the paranormal folks and the UFO, UAP folks, because it really is so ambiguous that we're really not sure what we're dealing with. Now, there are a couple of other researchers who have been looking into it very seriously, and I wanted to mention them. One of them is Jim Segala. He is a physicist engineer. He has been working on Skinwalker Ranch with Carl Crusher, who is an independent filmmaker. Now, I haven't met or spoken to either of these gentlemen yet, but evidently Mr. Segala and the folks at Skinwalker Ranch have had some sightings of the Hatman. And so have some of the folks allegedly at Blind Frog Ranch. But again, I've not spoken to any of those individuals to confirm. But it's very interesting to me that if they have, we know that the native tribes actually have pictographs of figures that look exactly like the Hatman. They've Heather's seen them too. I believe you looked some of them up.
And I found reports of hieroglyphs, but I've reached out to my archaeologist friend just to get confirmation on that.
Yeah, I did find a mention of, through my friend Archery History, He is an Englishman who does consultation work on ancient aliens. He let me know about an ancient Sumerian figure called Ukut, who was described in the same way as the Hatman entity. Whether or not they're the same thing, I don't know. But it just shows you that this same figure is represented in different civilizations across the planet. So it's an ancient thing, whatever it is. It's apparently been here a long time.
Yep. Yeah. Now, and real quick before we forget, and I forget about it, Enfield Demon House, they want to know, are the Hatman the same as the Shadow Man?
Oh, thank you for bringing that up, Enfield.
It's Jay.
Yeah.
Jay.
Oh, Jay. Hello, Jay. So this is the interesting phenomenon that makes the Hatman in particular different. Shadow people seem to show up before the Hatman. If you want to have a hierarchy system, the Hatman is the alpha. Now, before he shows up, a lot of people report shadow people, shadow creatures. They'll see them moving through their different spaces, even in broad daylight. There are reports of these things even in broad daylight, folks, even outside. So it's not strictly reserved to, your creepy bedroom situation. Mm-hmm. And then two other characters, and I sent you some pictures of them, Heather.
Yep,
one of them we called the Grinner, and the other we called the Hag. Yeah, that's the Grinner. A lot of people in these surveys have reported seeing this thing, the Hag, and shadow people before and after having an encounter with the Hatman. But the Hatman seems to be the head demon of this particular group. So I don't know if these beings are connected or just, I'm not sure what the connection there is, other than they are all seen in the same spaces, interacting with people separately.
Mm-hmm.
Which is pretty terrifying.
Photos or just this one?
Yeah. So this is the Grinner.
Yeah, and can you send those to me, Heather, when you get a chance?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. The Grinner is always described as being very tall, 6 to 8 feet tall, with very much that clown sort of face with the big smile. Mm-hmm. People have had a lot of dreams about this thing. Sometimes they say it shows up in what looks like an ice cream truck of all things. How weird is that?
I think I have that. There we go.
Yeah. The way some of the children have described the vehicle, the ice cream truck, it almost makes you wonder if it's some sort of extraterrestrial vehicle or something that is being represented differently.
And this is
I don't know.
A 1950s, 1960s ice cream truck?
Yes. So that's the other thing about, Hatman has been represented differently, in different ways. And you've got pictures of that too. But the ice cream truck specific
gain their trust.
Yeah, that's something interesting. It's both that the ice cream truck and the Grinner are very 1950-ish, and the predominant version of the Hatman seen here in the U.S. looks like Gestapo from the 1940s or 50s with the trench coat and the hat. Mm-hmm. Very specific time period. So this is the Hag. This thing, I had an experience with this thing as well. Yeah, and this is probably some different name that I'm not familiar with, but when I had an experience with it, it would literally come into my room and it would sit on the corner of my bed. And I was young, and I think I saw it twice. And then when it looked at me, I passed out. Mm-hmm. I think I was 8. Some people have reported this thing sitting on their chest, mm-hmm. coming out of the closet. And that, there's just some very weird things. But that, the Grinner and the Hatman, they seem to work together, and the shadow mm-hmm. people.
Yeah. And then Frances said a quick question. She wants to know, is there a percentage of folks in the survey that does not perceive him as a predator?
Yes, but it is minuscule. So I would say maybe 2%. And I'm glad she brought that up, because there are people who have had unbelievably positive encounters with the Hatman. Some people have had premonitions of world events or of personal or family events or medical emergencies. A few people have even reported that the Hatman saved their life by letting them know about a medical problem that they were having. A lot of the women who have talked about their experiences report having him come and see them when they're pregnant, either right before they give birth or right after, which is strange, is it not? So there are people who have had positive encounters with the Hatman, but they're pretty rare. They're pretty
I've
rare.
heard that sometimes after seeing maybe not necessarily the Hatman, but a shadow figure, they would either have good luck or something good happen or something bad. But it leads me to another question: is how many of the people that you know of that have actually seen this entity or whatever it is have had interaction with it, like you did, like you actually touched it, or it hissed at you, or looked? There's a lot of stories that I've heard about this, and I've heard many over the years, is that they would see it and then it would be gone, and it wouldn't say anything, it wouldn't approach them, it might just stretch out its hand or something, and then it would disappear. So I'm just curious that I haven't heard a lot of stories about actual physical interaction. You know, like you said, tangible, something you can actually touch, or you ran into it, you said. You know,
there's a physical.
I'm finding this fascinating.
It was a physical interaction, that's for sure. And if something, is a ghost, it shouldn't be able to do that to you, I don't think. But this thing had mass. So the stories and the surveys that we have collected have been people who have all had like a really dramatic experience with this thing where it spoke. They had a physical interaction with it. They had multiple encounters with it. So we've really tried to curate some of the more detailed encounters that people have had. Because as you say, a lot of people, thousands of people have seen this thing. They maybe see it once and they never see it again. They have no interaction with it. It's just watching them, which is another fascinating aberration of the behavior. It's an observer. It observes people. There are obviously classifications of people that it's going to interact with on some level. And the fact that it's different, this is indicative of whatever psychology is going on with it. Why do certain people have a positive experience while the majority do not? You know what I mean? So it's really, we just don't know what it is.
It's fascinating. In my beliefs anyway, because I'm a Roman Catholic born and raised, and I was trained in the Roman Catholic way. But in my beliefs, if this is something, definitely sounds something negative, but if this is demonic and not some kind of alien, if this is a demonic entity, it's on a short leash. It's only a lot. It can only do or go so far as God will allow, but sometimes God will allow bad things to happen. But in the case of you and your sister, and I was thinking about this when you were telling the story, you had some kind of divine intervention there that
without a doubt,
you're not allowed to pull that leash back. It said, get the hell out of Dodge. That's the way I interpret that.
We were very lucky is the way we interpret it. We were blessed, and God just felt bad for us and said, okay, you two have been through enough. I'm going to give you a Hail Mary and get you out of this one, since you didn't bring it on yourself. But something else I wanted to mention to you folks is that there was a precursor of both the nuclear program and the CERN program during World War II that the Nazis were running. The Ahnenerbe, which was the occult science division of the Nazi Party, was all about messing around and finding out. And they were doing experiments with dimensional physics based on quantum mechanics, based on occult literature and practices. They were just mixing it all up to see if they could contact other beings from other realities or dimensions or realms of consciousness. And one of the things that has occurred to me based on the results of the survey is this. So the 200 people that I've got survey points for. So I've broken them up into generations: the boomers, the Gen Xers, and like the millennial Gen Z folks.
Mm-hmm.
So the boomers had, as a group, maybe, based on the surveys, maybe 21% of them were boomers, right? That were of that age group. There is a 50% increase in reported sightings from that generation to Gen X. And this is still before the advent of social media or the internet, based on, the reports, when this happened. Mm-hmm. And then from my generation, Gen X, to the millennials and Gen Z, it's a 75% increase. Now, we can attribute that to social media and the internet, I'm sure. But the fact of the matter is, it seems like contact has really increased. Sightings have increased worldwide in countries that never even had internet until maybe 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. South America, the Middle East, they call this thing a jinn. And in their belief systems, jinn have tribes, they have religions, they have family groups, and they're a race of people who exist basically in a different dimensional plane. And that's their understanding of it. But I guess my point is, and I'll shut up, is that this thing does seem to have a cultural basis everywhere. Mm-hmm. Whether and how it's interpreted might be slightly different, but it seems to be a consistent thing. And the people that were running the experiments, Jan and Irby, they had their hands in a lot of pies.
Yep.
Wow.
Here's the rest of the photos that might spark up some. I think some of the photos show the cultural differences as well.
Yeah, they do. So this is this particular form of the Hatman has been reported a lot in Eastern Europe, believe it or not. Eastern Europe seems to have the predominant number of sightings of this version of the Hatman. Although, Joe, up in your neck of the woods, there are a few people that have seen this version, and there's a lot of history there. So it kind of makes sense to me.
Colonial soldier.
Yeah, it's exactly what it looks like, a colonial soldier. And that particular style of dress was pretty common, I guess, for a couple hundred years. Mm-hmm. So there's that one. Yep. Mm-hmm. Next one. This is the cowboy.
Yeah. Cowboy hat.
The cowboy. Yeah. This cowboy version has been seen a lot out here on the West Coast and in Australia, of all places. They have a different name for the hat, and it's slightly different. But I have a friend of mine who is sending me research from Australia, and this is a very common form of it reported there. Mm-hmm. So the Asian version of the Hatman, this will appear a little differently based on which Asian culture is interacting with it, but it is a presence in Asia as well. The monk. So this particular version of the Hatman is seen the most predominantly in Europe. Europe and the Middle East is this is the version that they see the most commonly. This is the version that I saw here in the States. And we actually have a large number of military people that have also seen the Hatman. And one of the details that we've discovered in the survey is that a lot of the people that probably 80% of the people who did the survey have come from military families and have reported experiences, multi-generational experiences with the Hatman. This I wanted to bring up, you guys, because this is fascinating to me. This was a very famous fashion designer from Europe. She just came out with a collection. This is what she came out with. And I wanted to ask you, Joe, because you worked with the Warrens and you, Heather, are a doctor. So you have done a lot of work in studying the psychiatry and the psychological profile of society. Isn't it fascinating that this design, which absolutely looks like the Hatman, in my opinion, has come so far that now it's in the mainstream. And you wonder, is that deliberate? Or was that just, purely from the designer's imagination? But it's so insidious that it now has made it to a fashion runway. It is deeply embedded in the subconscious.
It almost reminds me of something like, I would assume, not knowing the designer, that she had an experience, whether it's one she remembered or not. Because
I think so too.
I'm a firm believer that even dating back to, when Dracula and Frankenstein and all those books were written, I truly do believe that all horror stories have some type of true life origin.
Absolutely.
So, anything that is made up at one point, there had to have been some type of connection, whether it was, a visitation,
a dream somebody had, or a nightmare.
Yeah. She might just not remember.
Absolutely. It's a very real possibility. Again, this is the colonial version. I just a slightly different hat, but very much reported throughout Europe.
It's like a British soldier.
I would almost expect to see that here in Florida, because it reminds me of pirates.
This is the pirate version. I should have said that instead. The hat is different, but there's been a lot of sightings of the pirate version in the southern U.S.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
and in Africa they see a lot of it.
Yeah, because I know it's Fort Jefferson. I actually wrote about it in the book that's coming out later this year. Is people would, in Fort Jefferson, that's where Dr. Mudd was at after he was convicted for his conspiracy in the Lincoln murder.
That's Samuel Mudd?
What? Samuel Mudd. Yeah.
And thank you. I know of him.
Yeah, he ended up getting his pardon because an epidemic of yellow fever swept through the whole prison cell, because that's where they put all the Civil War prisoners. And because he helped treat everybody, him and one of his partners were released early for good behavior. But there was so much death, and the bodies just piled up in that area. And people report in the jail, because you can actually go to Fort Jefferson and go through the jail cells, and you'll hear sounds of the jail cells opening and closing. But people, I think I read 4 reports that I found of people looking down the whole jail cell, and at the end, they see a Hatman standing there staring at them with the fedora and the whole thing with the red eyes. And then once the Hatman realizes he's being watched, he steps into one of the jail cells, and then they go down to try to find him, and he's gone.
Yeah. Isn't it fascinating, the variety of experiences people have with this thing? Yeah. I wonder too.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I wanted to ask you before I forget, Samuel Mudd, that's where the phrase came from. Your name is Mudd.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I was trying to remember my history lesson.
Yeah. I was that. I think so far, all 3 of the Florida books I've written, I've touched on him, because I found it fascinating that he was here in Florida for so many years. And, the jail he was kept in is just an hour drive and then a 30-minute boat ride from where I live.
And everybody should get all 3 of Heather's books. I have them. I have read them, and they are wonderful books. She's an excellent writer. Please go get them. They're on Amazon. I'm plugging you.
The last one is the best one. The last one you just did on lighthouses.
Yeah, I love that one.
I love
but
lighthouses.
Monday, my new one comes out.
Oh, good. I'm looking forward to that one.
Yep. Monday, my new one comes out, and that's Haunted Florida Ghost Towns, because Florida is the 2nd state in the United States next to Nevada, and as far as number of ghost towns.
We just got back from a trip there in January, and we loved it. We went through a little bit and had a great time. Lots of history.
Oh yeah. So, and then I got emails today about the one book I submitted in December that it's a mess. And then my other book is due this week. So
no, you got a lot on your plate.
everything hit at once. But more photos before I forget.
So I wanted to show you this one. So actually the Native Americans, the Native Americans, particularly the Chinook tribe here in the Pacific Northwest, this is Achawea. I'm probably saying that wrong, and I apologize to all of my indigenous friends here. But several of the Indian cultures here in the PNW also have stories of the Hatman. They for the most part regard this as a negative entity. And so even, the indigenous tribes had awareness of it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, he's everywhere.
He really is. And this is just a modern depiction of what most people report. And this is what we saw in our own experience. This was a drawing that one of the children made. And this child, who was 10 years old, described seeing the Hatman 4 different times from the time that he was 6 to 10. One of the disturbing patterns that the survey has revealed is that 70% of the experiencers who have seen the Hatman and have had multiple encounters report that started between 5 and 7 years old. This particular child, Daniel, said that the Hatman was coming to him and telling him that there was going to be a great disaster and that him and his family were going to have to go live in a cave because a comet was going to kill the Earth. And so this was an example of the picture that he drew for us.
That photo just reminds me of the movie Knowing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, now, is this is a depiction of a Hatman, I guess. But why the upside down cross? It looks like an upside down crucifix.
Yeah, and I asked Daniel about that, and he said that he added that because he wanted to show that this was an evil character. He said he didn't actually see an upside down crucifix. He's a kid. He added it for drama. So,
yeah, but that's pretty interesting that a 10-year-old would know to do that.
Yeah,
unless he wasn't inspired by something. I'm just I've got a lot of
terrified.
questions.
Yeah.
This is a young man that you've obviously met and interviewed, correct?
I did interview him with the permission of his parents. Yeah.
Right, of course. Do you find that many of the people that have experiences don't want to talk about it, or they're eager to tell somebody that doesn't think they're crazy?
Yeah, until I started talking about it openly on TikTok, probably 90% of the feedback that first started coming back to me was just that people were so grateful that there was somewhere to share their experience because they thought they were crazy. Mm-hmm. They thought, they didn't want to talk about it because they don't want to be misconstrued.
Yeah,
and they said,
and
they said the other problem was that they're gaslit constantly about it just being a sleep paralysis issue. There's, physical neurological issues that go on with sleep paralysis that are completely different than what's happening with this situation. Mm-hmm. We were wide awake. We were adults and we were sober. This was not sleep paralysis. And I'm not discounting the fact that some people may be having that issue. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people have responded that they felt very ignored and disregarded. Oh, you're just having sleep paralysis. It's not a real thing. So people want to talk about it. They want to know more about it. That was why I had consented to give the interview for the Hatman Project, because I really wanted to inspire people to not be afraid to bring it out.
Right. And I have sleep paralysis. And then I've also had encounters at night that resembled sleep paralysis. And it's easy. I mean, once you've gone through both, it's, because when it's just regular sleep paralysis, you can't move, you wake up and you just lie there. You can't move and do anything. But the one, actually the most recent one, I couldn't move, but I was like, I could feel something on walking, almost like they were walking on the bed. And the bed was, and, my body was moving as this thing was, moving along the bed. And I remember looking at my husband trying to scream for help, and I couldn't. Where with just regular sleep paralysis, it's like, okay, I'm awake. This is scary. And then if you just count back from 10 in your head, you go right back to sleep.
Right.
So,
right.
There's a big difference between the two of them.
Well, and quite frankly, if I've spoken with a lot of nursing and medical staff, and they've told me there's not a lot of kids out there with sleep paralysis. There's not. Mm-hmm. So, even that just lends more credence to the fact that there is definitely a difference between sleep paralysis and an encounter.
Right.
Yep. Well, what percentage would you say that, to your knowledge, are children that have these experiences as opposed to adults?
Just based on the survey, I would say probably over 60% of children.
Wow. And then
before the age of 8. Before the age of 8.
That's intriguing. And those, out of those children, do they have multiple sightings or visits?
Yeah.
You want to call them?
Yeah. A lot of these children reported multiple sightings. Now, these kids said that for some period of time, it would just come and observe, and then it would get closer, and then it would start to interact. So there's like a buildup, before the
almost like
encounter.
a trust building thing.
Yeah.
Yes, and then also there are these appearances of things like the hag and the grinner, or shadow people or shadow creatures. So there's, it seems like a whole systemic breakdown of these things all making an appearance.
The only reason I could think of the hag and the grinner is to terrify somebody.
Absolutely, it's a psychological tactic.
Is going to be terrified to see something like that, because your brain just can't, wrap itself around that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, I have a lot of questions, but for the people that this entity has spoken to, and you mentioned about the boy saying that there's a comet going to hit the earth. I'm wondering, what does it say to them? Is it a message of doom or death or destruction? Is it ever any good news? Like you're going to win the lotto tomorrow night, or
right?
No, so I'm not trying to joke. I'm just curious.
No, it's a great question.
Say to people,
it really varies the gamut from threats to predictions to outright lies. Occasionally, people have been given prophecies that were positive in nature, or information about. There was one lady in particular that stands out. She was pregnant, and she was having complications with her pregnancy. She was getting ready to lose it, and the Hatman appeared to her one night and said, "We've fixed your baby. Everything is fine now." And she never saw it again. And she said that his name was Ben, and that she was very comfortable with him, and she wasn't scared. So the array of different experiences are there, but 80% of them are negative. And sometimes it seems to be about just breaking down the person psychologically.
Yeah.
And other times it seems to be trying to feed this person information in order to create some sort of an effect.
Well, make a relationship, gain their trust. So now, through their own free will, they're almost maybe unconsciously welcome this thing in. And it's given them permission, which is very dangerous, because now through your own free will, you've given something permission to begin a relationship with. Whether it just be making eye contact or trying to communicate with it, asking it questions.
Yeah. You're engaging.
I have a lot of
the most disturbing pattern that I think I've found so far is the fact that, without a doubt, 95% of the people who filled out the survey, they were having problems at home, either alcohol, drugs, mental illness, domestic violence, vulnerable people in bad situations, especially the kids. And it seems to me, based on what we've seen so far, these things need to have a certain frequency of a certain, I'd say between 0 and 20 hertz. There seems to be a certain negative frequency that has to exist or be created in the environment to allow them to physically manifest. You know what I mean?
Something like infrasound, something like that.
Yeah, infrasound, something like that. And this is one of the reasons I'm wondering if this is if these are paradimensional creatures that are able, either through technology or some sort of ability that we're not familiar with, maybe psychically, are able to find holes or create openings into our dimension, or maybe they smell that negative energy, or it's a food or something. I don't know, but there's got to be some reason that it draws them, that they feel like it attracts them. And so that's why I wonder if maybe all of the experimentation at CERN, because of course they never really fully disclose what they're doing, has not created fractal tears in time space that's allowing these things to come through. I don't know, but something's going on. They see it at Skinwalker Ranch too.
Some of the people, and Heather, you probably figure I'm going to ask this question, but some of the people that have had sightings and things like that, if you know, have they been involved in some kind of divination practice? Ouija boards,
That was
seances, tarot cards, things like that, that would open doors to and make them more vulnerable.
We do have reports of that. There are maybe 30 or 40% of the people that respond to the survey said that they were involved in tarot cards or occult sciences or practice or groups. And they felt, because that was one of the questions we asked was, were you involved in any way? And do you feel like that's what brought this thing to you? Do you have some kind of concept of what attracted it? So I think that again is definitely a way of attracting them or creating space for them to exist. Because let's face it, 90% of the time when people are getting involved in the occult or the paranormal, it's because they are either searching for something or, they have questions. There's some need in them that they're looking to know something, to have some kind of information. And what a better way to feed on people that are looking for answers, than to wind your way in. Oh, I got answers.
That's just it. Some people are looking for answers of the future, of the unknown, and we're not meant to have those answers. And I had one theory that pops in my head about some of the children is people will say, well, why are the children? They're so innocent and young. I said, well, maybe it's a generational thing that's been passed down through their lineage,
there are definitely genealogical connections to this phenomenon. And before I get into that, what I wanted to say about the kids was, interestingly enough, some of these kids have told me that at first they thought the Hatman was a protective entity because whatever abuse or circumstances were going on at home were far more scary and terrifying and traumatizing than this thing just watching them. So that is another deceptive practice. And what I tell people is, salt and sugar look the same, but they are not. And just because something is friendly doesn't mean it's your friend. It lulls you into that false security.
That's very true.
One of the things that we've really noticed too is that people that are amongst the RH negatives who have had an experience, a physical encounter with the Hatman, they are predominantly of Celtic or Nordic Germanic heritage. They're RH negative, or they are indigenous, like Native American, Native South American, very, and that their family will have had multiple sightings throughout generations. So there definitely is a link there as well.
Yep.
How many people actually know that there's an RH negative blood type?
It's really interesting. Most people don't even realize.
A few years ago, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's not like any of us walk around and say, "Hi, I'm Philomena. I'm an RH negative. How are you?" We don't do that. And we're not educated in school to even necessarily worry about or know what our blood type is. But it is really important. We are biologically different. And the danger in not knowing your blood type is that RH negatives are deathly allergic to RH positive blood type. If we receive, a transplant of that blood, it will kill us as an allergic reaction. That's why RH negative mothers who are pregnant, they have to have Rogam, which is an immunosuppressant, because RH negatives and RH positives cannot have a baby together without the risk of RH sensitization, which is basically you've got two different species of human that are trying to create a baby, and they don't recognize each other as the same. And so it rejects the fetus as an invading organism. That's why we have to have Rogam. Yeah. We're a hybrid. That's for sure.
Josh wants to know, why do you think the Shadow Man, and he did comment later saying he meant to say the Hatman, appears differently to different cultures or regions, or is it a completely different entity?
That's a great question, Josh. Thank you very much for that. I believe, and I know that guy. Mr. Joe can certainly educate me differently because he would know, or Heather would know. But as far as I understand, predominantly the paranormal represents itself based on people's cultural perceptions.
Mm-hmm.
And this group of beings, they are intelligent. And it seems to me that they choose how they look based on what's going to be most culturally impactful to the people that they're dealing with. People in Uganda have reports of the Hatman that looks like a cowboy. Now, that doesn't make much sense to me, but then you find out that the guy in Uganda's grandpa was their version of a cowboy. So you just never know. But if it's relating to their own family lineage in some way, or if it's relating regionally to where they're at with their culture. But it does seem to respond to people individually based on their perceptions of things.
And then Philip wants to know, did they self-manifest them due to stress?
Hi, Philip. That's also a great question. I think that when you are under enormous amounts of trauma and stress, like my sister and I were, for instance. Now, we weren't aware that there was a creature called the Hatman. We had no awareness of any of that. But perhaps the vibration, the frequency of pain and grief that we were putting out attracted it. Again, it's a predator. It's an apex predator. So perhaps it has some way of sensing that kind of energy, and it's drawn to it. That's the only way I can think of. But I don't like to say that it's self-manifested, only because I think you would have to have a concept of what it is in order to bring it to yourself. And in our experience, we'd never heard of such a thing. The first time we heard about it was a few years later on Art Bell's radio show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I do know in the research that I've done, just to get caught up to your level of research with the Hatman, is a lot of people are claiming that it's a new phenomenon, and it's caused because of Benadryl overdoses.
Yeah, that's something that the Gen Z kids have been playing with. I think because it was a funny, popular meme on TikTok for a little while. But really, that's a form of gaslighting. Yeah. To just say, it's because of Benadryl. Now, I will say that psychoactive drugs like ayahuasca, LSD, all these other mind-altering, consciousness-altering drugs, I have no doubt that if you take the right combination of things, that you can experience this critter and other critters. But I don't think that you can just take some Benadryl and then dial up the Hatman. This is not. Yeah, I don't think it works like that. I can't
take it with me to Fort Jefferson and try it out.
Right. Bottoms up with some Benadryl. Let's get hopping.
Well, I mean, Philip makes a good point, though, because stress to me would be some form of vulnerability. Someone that's very
fear,
stressed
desperation.
Out, someone that very has high anxiety and is very stressed out would definitely be. I use the term victim souls. Someone that is vulnerable to things like this. Not to knock the Generation Z or whatever, but people tend. This is a term I like to say is people tend to mock what they don't understand.
Right.
They say, that's just he took too much Benadryl, or something like that.
Yeah.
People are quick to write off things that they either have no interest in or they don't understand. Whereas people like us say, we want answers. Let's dig into this a little bit and let's see what, throw the puzzle out there and see what pieces fit. But that's why we do what we do. And, other people might be out there making fun of us, saying we're a bunch of kooks and stuff like that. It's like, well, there's got to be something to this with all the years that we've all been doing this.
Yeah. Well, and I say to people too, you only have that attitude until you actually experience, and then suddenly your whole 360 worldview shifts and all the funny goes away. And that's one of the ways that we can really discern whether people have had a really valid experience, the kind that we're trying to study based on, we're not doing surveys with people who just saw it standing at the end of the hall. We're really looking for people who've had interaction with it because we really want to study the behaviors. But I think the Gen Z kids, they don't know how to process it. They make fun of everything. We're all just old people to them.
Joe's the old one.
Thank you. I'm the elder in the group, I guess. But like I've said many times,
You're the
before,
wise sage. Yeah.
yeah. People that don't know who I am, how long I've been doing this. I mean, I've been involved in this kind of work since 1986. And my point in that is, we didn't have the internet. The internet didn't come out to
No.
what, 96?
Yeah.
And then it took many, many years to develop and get to where we are today. We have all these social media platforms, and it's great to one degree where it helps you with the research, but then there's also a lot of false information out there, and people are susceptible to believing anything without proof.
Yeah, I miss going to the library.
I do.
Well, yeah, you remember encyclopedias?
I lived at the library. Oh man,
I miss my encyclopedias.
Ask the kids today. What are those? I can ask my kids.
Yeah, what's that? I love the smell of books. They
probably don't know what they were. Just Google it.
Yeah,
it's a verb.
Yeah,
Google it.
I mean, we have a library here, but it's like all computers, and then like 1 or 2 rows of books, and it's like,
yeah, I know it's not the same.
All Heather's books.
They don't have any
Warren books. All the Warren's books, and
you need to take them some of your books. That's what you need to do.
They don't want anything to do with the paranormal. I've tried.
That's what's
free
lectures and everything, and they don't want anything to do with it.
Who doesn't?
Yeah,
our library system here in town.
Oh, really?
Oh,
yeah, I actually just booked another one yesterday. And it's early in the season. Everybody usually gets a hold of me in August. Yeah, could you do right before Halloween? What last year? One asked me to do one on Halloween. I'm like, yeah, no one's going to show up. The kids are going to be, I'm going to be out, getting candy like I need it.
It's really interesting too, especially post-COVID. The way that society interacts now is so different than when we were all kids. And the way that we're getting together now is really, this is how people get together now. The social gathering places have really shrunk. There's not a lot of places people can get together and talk.
Yeah, Joe, for Halloween, you need to dress up as Lorraine and carry Annabelle around.
There you go.
I open the door like this, kids throw candy at me.
We do have a few more photos real quick to get through.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, so this was really fascinating. This child, different kid.
Well, and this kid again, the upside down cross.
Yeah, and this kid, or maybe it is the same kid, but this kid described, I can't see the picture very well. It might be.
Oh.
Yeah, but they said that the Hatman was giving birth. It was squatting out eggs. Which there were little round shadow balls is what they described, which I thought was crazy.
Orbs?
Yeah, like orbs or something.
Orbs could be real.
That was the only time I've heard of the description.
Come from.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and this is just, again, this is the most commonly recognized version. This is a photograph. This is really interesting. Thank you, Pastor Brown, for letting me borrow this. So one of the people that we interviewed for the Hatman project provided us this photo. It was taken like circa 1960s. Both those men are still alive. They're grandfathers themselves now. And they told Pastor that there was nobody at that Christmas that was dressed up like that. They were in Nebraska. There was nobody wearing a top hat. And it was just him and his brother in the photograph standing in front of the tree. There was nobody standing beside or behind them. This was taken on a Polaroid picture. And for you younger folks who don't know,
I remember what a
Polaroid is. Yeah, Google it. So this is an authentic picture, and you can actually see how much taller it is than both the boys. We actually had that professionally looked at, and it was rated authentic. This is another authentic photo.
Couldn't really play with a Polaroid.
No. This is also a Polaroid photograph. And you can see the oddly shaped figure on top of this guy's head. Again, this young man, this was taken in the 80s, said that there was nobody in the back. There was nothing like that going on. It was just him and his friend hanging out. And he took a photo, and this is what they caught.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, so I just want to provide a few pictures just so people who have not seen it, could kind of have an idea of what people are talking about.
Could I have your permission to use some of those?
Absolutely, you can use them all.
Those, maybe a few of those, Heather, if you don't mind sending them to me.
Yep, I'll send
use
them over.
in my lecture.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
I get about these things all the time, and I said I have a friend that lives out in the West Coast and knows all about this.
I'll send you some more. Yeah, absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely. I'll also send you an outline, Joe, of all kind of all the data points that we've collected through Project Umbra so far.
That would be fantastic.
What we know.
Thank
you. Know.
You have
Yeah,
my email
absolutely.
address?
I think Heather will give it to me.
Yeah.
I gotta find it, but I have it.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
You should know it by heart.
This thing's actually been seen in wartime too on battlefields. We had a couple of the folks who responded said that they saw it in Vietnam, in the jungle. And it was the Asian version, but they saw the Hatman during wartime combat. Even the Vietnamese themselves had reports of seeing this thing. So I thought that was interesting too, that it would be present even during a conflict like that.
Well, wars are just full of death,
Right.
Almost like a form of the Grim Reaper. In some sort of way, probably, if it's a foreshadowing of death or a tragic event or something like that.
Well, and it seemed, there's a couple of theories about, is it a time traveler? Is it alien? Is it paranormal? We don't really know, but to my mind, it's like, what would be the point of interacting with humanity and trying to manipulate people into certain behavior or into certain events? But I get that's probably the same question that you folks ask all the time when you're dealing with the paranormal as well, is what's the point? Why do these particular things happen? What are they trying to do?
Unfortunately, I don't think we're ever going to have those answers in our lifetime. We're not meant
probably
to know.
Not.
We're not meant to have those answers.
Yeah.
Only God knows those answers. And,
right.
We're limited at what we should be allowed to know.
I think so too. Yeah.
But that's where people get themselves in trouble when they start, trying to find, out about the future. Now you're opening doors, and I see Father Ken's doing this. Father Ken knows what I'm talking about. Hey, Father, how are you?
Hey, Father Ken.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah, and I always say too, the good news, folks, is that yes, this thing exists, but God also exists, or Great Spirit, or whatever you want to call it. You can call it blue cheese for all I care. But the fact of the matter is, if that darkness exists, then so does the light. And that's one of the reasons I really do feel it's important for this subject to come out, because we are dealing with some form of consciousness. And but obviously there is also another form of consciousness that is trying to help us. And so I do try to encourage people that way, because I know it's a terrifying thing that happens. People are really upset. Usually when I interview them, it triggers them. It's not something that is a pleasant memory for them to talk about. So you have to respect people's feelings.
Some people, they'll say, I've never told this to anyone before. I don't want to talk about it again or something. And you can't blame them if they had a terrifying experience. But if you can't get them to talk and give you those data points, I mean, we can get as much information as we can, but we're never going to have the final piece of the puzzle. At least I don't think we can in our lifetime.
Right.
Maybe when we pass over, we'll know.
Right, maybe so. There's an outfit called the Monroe Institute, and they study consciousness. And they are, I believe, working with some of the folks at Skinwalker Ranch as well, because of the activity that they've had there. And that was one of the things that I wanted to mention, is that some of the data points, especially about the physical and genealogical characteristics of experiencers, match data that is also happening in the Missing 411 series by David Paulides, where people go missing in national parks and other, strange disappearances. And it also matches data. Yeah, it also matches data of things that are happening at Skinwalker Ranch and places like that. So again, that's why I say this is kind of the bridge between the paranormal and meta science, because we're not really sure what we're dealing with, but a lot of people are dealing with it.
Fascinating.
So this is what I'm saying. We all need to go to Skinwalker Ranch. Make it happen, Heather. I'll carry the coffee. I'll carry the coffee.
I have contacts, but no.
She's got our contacts.
They're not getting me anywhere yet. I'm getting close though for some projects.
That's cool.
I'm still.
I hope you do it.
Still working on this one, but doors are opening though. Hopefully we can keep opening them. So.
Joe, I wanted to ask, did Ed or Lorraine ever discuss or report seeing the Hatman themselves or shadow people or the Grinner?
Yes. I never really heard the term Hatman until later on.
Okay.
But it was in the 90s probably, but they would refer to them as shadow people.
Okay.
Because, you'd see shadow people that didn't have a hat, but then, or the Hatman would be described as a shadow person and said, it was wearing a hat. So the term Hatman probably wasn't that popular, or at least I hadn't heard it a lot. Yeah, of course, shadow people. And sometimes, I remember Ed saying that sometimes you'll know when it's darker than the dark, like you mentioned earlier. If you're looking into a dark room or in a dark basement or a dark forest, and you could clearly see this dark figure because it's darker than space,
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, the short answer is yes. I've seen shadows too, but most of the time, and I don't know about the folks you've interviewed, but it's almost like you see them out of your periphery. You don't see them head on. It's always out of your periphery, and then when you look, they're gone, or they've darted somewhere else, and now it's on the other side. So they're very because they don't want to be discovered. They don't want you to know that they're there. They don't want you to know their name. And but yeah.
And I wanted to mention that too. This is something that I don't think gets addressed enough. In my limited experience from what I've seen, there are consequences, folks. There are consequences into looking into these things. And the Hatman is no exception. I have to tell you that in the 3 years that I decided to get on this ride, I've seen some things. I've had more issues with bad luck, medical issues, weird synchronicities, just all these things, paranormal activity than I had, in the previous 20. And it really does seem to be related to investigating this phenomenon.
And we could never prove it, but I actually just had this conversation with my cardiologist. And he listened intently. He didn't laugh at me. But I've got some health issues lately. I have a heart condition and I have a failing liver. And I don't drink. I drink diet soda. But is it possible that my health issues now later in life are the result of work that I've done and still doing? Now, obviously I believe it is because I have an open mind about everything, but could never prove it. Because there's so many other factors. There's environmental factors. There's hereditary traits. There's heart issues on both sides of my family. Things like that. But I remember Ed Warren had his first heart attack during the Maurice Theriault exorcism. Now, could you say that was caused by? No, you can't with any level of surety. But I am convinced that it's possible that at least some of my health issues are caused by the work that I've been doing. I'm not going to stop.
It makes you wonder. I mean, look at me in 2018, out of the blue, no signs, no symptoms, no nothing, stage 5 kidney failure. Just
there is no stage 5.
That's what it was.
Oh, kidney, liver. Kidney. No, I got stage 4. Failure. There was no stage 5. Stage 5 is taking a dirt nap.
I should have been on dialysis, getting a new kidney, and going through all of that. But when they did the tests, the follow-up test, it showed a healthy kidney. But my blood work still showed. My blood work still showed.
I'm so glad
my kidney was failing.
That's great.
So, but now it's free and clear. Thank God. They're not even no signs in my blood work.
Thank God. Yeah.
But that doesn't happen to normal people, and no one in my family has kidney problems.
Right.
So where did that come from?
Were you on any medication that it could have reacted to, or nothing like that? Huh?
And the doctor said normally you get like stage 1, 2, or 3, or something along that line. But my blood work showed that I was, it was free and clear in 6 months before, and then when they ran that blood work that time, it was all the way to stage 5. And he had no clue, he's like, I don't get it. He couldn't figure anything out.
Yeah, but that's where your faith comes in.
Mm-hmm. Father Malachi Martin and even Father Padre Pio both spoke about the effects on themselves from battling evil. And all the other native cultures, the shamanic cultures, they've all described that there are physical effects in dealing with the supernatural. So I really do think that, the science behind that would probably be the low elf waves. Like I said before, if you can physically destroy people with certain frequencies. So perhaps the negative paranormal has a destructive effect on human, tissue and energy. But I have to say, I've never had a period of time that has been quite this dramatic in my life. So I really do attribute it to taking on this project.
It's extremely possible, and I believe likely.
Either that or you visited Robert the Doll.
Oh yeah.
I want to give him a hug. I think he just needs a hug.
I think he's lonely. Yeah. I would really like to come out to your neck of the woods, Joe, and meet you and go see the Warren Museum and all of that. I've never seen any of it, but I think.
Well, I got the twin sister behind me. Where is she? She's over here somewhere.
I see her. It's
a twin sister. She's good though.
I wanted to say that in my brief experience with folks who are in the ghost hunting realm of things, one of the things that I really am concerned about is the fact that a lot of groups don't seem to do like a mental health screening with applicants. And then on top of that, the group itself is not really keeping in conscious mind that there could be negative psychological effects to the work that they're doing, even if it's a casual fun thing that could physically manifest and affect their life. I think it really should be talked about more in terms of being a subject, because I bet if you were to, Zach Baggins is a great example. That guy looked like your typical college stud when he started, right? And now he's been immensely successful, but you can see the physical toll that's happened with all of them.
He's a very smart fellow. He's a
very smart.
But he tempts fate, when you go and say, if this is the gates of hell, why don't you rise up and get us? These things are listening. They're observing all the time. And they're not making the distinction between, he's just joking around and just being a showman. I have no doubt in my mind that the problems within his group and with him personally, medically, have had to do with what he's been doing for the last 20 years. But he's probably not going to stop. It's like someone that doesn't want to quit smoking. If they're smoking 2-3 packs a day and they have for 20 years, it's like, you're my friend. I want you to quit smoking, but I'm just a big pain in the ass unless they want to quit smoking. That's like asking me to stop eating Oreos. That ain't going to happen.
Right. Well, I think, we're all driven with passion, in searching for our own answers and having and doing what we do. And he's no different. He understands the cost, but he isn't going to stop because he's got that much passion for what he's doing. And I think that's the truth for us,
Like for us, the passion for us is to help people and educate people. Now that
let them know.
I'm in the age I am now. Yes, I'm still actively involved in cases when they need me. We have a lot of gifted people. But I spend more of my time now educating, and I'm getting educated now. I've learned a lot so far about this stuff, and
thank you.
I'd like to share it with your permission. I'd like to put a little segment in my lectures this year and talk.
I would love that.
Take a poll from my audience and say, how many people have heard of or seen or maybe had an interaction, and I could put them in touch with
Yeah.
you if you'd like. You know.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great. We are still collecting experiences. I think it's really important. I don't know what's going to happen with TikTok with the ban and stuff. I don't know what they're going to do there, but we do have a project on for YouTube channel as well, and I am going to be producing some new videos and content and updated information. So looking forward to that in the next couple of months as well. But I just think it's really important to talk about it, because there are so many people out there that are suffering, that have had these kind of experiences. They're scared. They don't know what to do. They don't know why it happened. And not that I know what to do, but I can at least comfort them in saying you're not alone in what you've experienced. Millions of other people have seen it too. And you're not crazy.
Yeah.
And I think that's the worst thing, is that people don't speak out because they're afraid of being called crazy. Who isn't? You know, but something real is happening to humanity, and it needs to be addressed.
Mm-hmm. You're right, and it's my wish, and Heather and I talk about this all the time. It's our wish, because I think I speak for all of us, and in the foundation as well. It's our hope that the people that truly need help, that truly are scared, whether they have a paranormal affliction or not, they think they do. Most people, they're not making this up. It's very real in their minds. And, you know, they need to come to people like us. You know, there's many people out there very gifted and talented and have a lot of experience in this. But, you know, I hope they find one of those people, and not one of these, you know, urban explorer YouTubers, you know, that don't know their ass from their elbow. And they're out there, you know, conjuring out there. You know, if there's anybody here who wants to speak to us, well, now you're trying to set up a relationship. That's not good. You know, that's not what you should be doing. You know, and they're not going to be, most likely not going to be hanging around in an old abandoned school or something, you know, or in a graveyard. And this may not make me popular for people to hear this, but this is what I believe through my 40 years of experience. You know, I used to be one of those people that went out to cemeteries respectfully. I would take photos. I still to this day, I try not to step on graves and be very respectful, but unfortunately, that's not the way it is these days, and a lot of people just go out there and have a good time, and you know, they'll stomp on graves. Oh, come on, rise up and get me, and you know.
And there's no aftercare for the families either. You'll see them go and they'll have their house investigated. The team will come in and do their work, but a lot of teams don't check in after to say, hey, listen, you know, have things calmed down? Is the family doing okay? You know, if they do recognize, I kind of think a trained counselor or a trained, you know, psychologist, social worker or something should almost be included, because if they can tell that there's family issues or mental health issues going on, you know, maybe they need referrals. I just think it's become commercialized and popularized to explore and play with the paranormal, but it has not been properly address that there are real life consequences to individuals and families as a result if they're not dealt with correctly.
Well, per our protocols, they have to have a full physical and psychological workup.
Yeah, see, I think that's super important.
And only a very small percentage of cases that come through, I would say, are paranormal in nature. Maybe 2%. You know, maybe even less than that. You know, I mean, they are out there, of course. But I always tell people, always look for a natural explanation, and instead of just taking the nuclear option and going to the supernatural. You know, maybe you've got squirrels in the attic or something, and you hear scratching noises and, you know, scurrying around, and people think I've got a demon. That word is thrown around like nothing these days, because it has to do with the YouTube algorithms or whatever. You throw demon in the title, it moves you up to the top of the list. That I don't agree with it. Now, it's not illegal, but I believe it's immoral, and I don't get involved in any of that stuff. But
yeah, I can agree with that, because I wrote an article. I mean, granted, it did talk about demonic entities, but it was titled "The Hoover Dam, Ghosts, Demons, and Satan." Oh my, was the title, and it's my #1 read blog post, and it's been up a year and a half now. But it was that was the article.
The difference is, you know what you're talking about.
Right.
These other people are like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. but yeah, no, with just, and that's the only thing that I have that says demon in it on my entire blog, and that's like the one that everyone gravitates to.
Well, I think too, in some cases, it might even be a matter of social education. You know, back in the old days, we had the village wise people who would tell you about the fae folk and the nature spirits and all these other creatures which may or may not exist in their pantheon of knowledge. You know, not everything was attributed to the demonic, and that's where the multidimensional comes in, and that's why I really felt it was important to say that this is an undefined phenomenon, because we know it's real, we know it's happening, we just don't know what it is specifically, and we may never know. The pastor thinks that they are the watchers. That's what he thinks the Hatman is a watcher. Other people think it's a time traveler. But the bottom line is, you know, unless we investigate and collect data and get surveys and talk to people, we're not going to really have a firm handle on what we're dealing with.
And that's a perpetual process, as you know. I mean,
it is. Yeah.
It's just ongoing. It's like you need more and more stories. You need more and more people to come forward, and
less gatekeeping. Yeah. Have you noticed? And I will speak on this for 1 second, and then I'll shut up. I promise.
No,
I'm so as somebody I am a nobody. You could find no less insignificant human on the planet. I don't. Well, I just mean that I have no presence in the world. Like, I'm not involved with the paranormal field or TV or UAP folks. I don't know anybody. Nobody knows me. And that's a beautiful thing, because I don't have any enemies yet. But it has been until tonight. Right. It has been incredibly hard to make contact with some researchers, because everybody is so, I think, invested in whatever their perception of their field is, that they get in a lot of friction with each other, and they don't talk together. And now you've got, you know, the paranormal field and the UFO field. They might be all investigating the same thing, but damned if we'll ever know, because they won't talk. And so I'm really hoping that maybe this is one of those subjects where we could try to get people from both fields involved to say, listen, let's all look at this through our own expertise, but let's see if we are all dealing with the same thing, rather than gatekeep information and not share.
Yeah, we should all be working together. Yeah.
I agree.
Well,
you know,
in a perfect world there would, but
now see, celebrities like you two could probably pull that off, but nobody like me is not gonna. Oh, you are. So
I'm just a guy that's been doing this a long time, and I know a few things.
I know.
That's it.
Well, anybody that hates you isn't worth knowing anyway, Heather. So we'll just ban them off the list anyway.
That's all I do, is I just, you know, block and move on. But you know,
that's the best.
I mean,
quickly getting smaller.
The haters. I mean, I don't know why there are haters of anyone out there.
We should all be supporting each other.
You know, people with experience, that the years of experience that we have, and people that have more experience than I do, you'd think that those are the people that people would want to listen to. You know, because we've been around a while. You know,
and
you've seen some things. Know things, but I was at a place where many of these people were. I didn't know anything. I was 18 years old, out of school. I met the Warrens, and I was lucky that they took me under their wing, and I studied under them. But I didn't just study under them. I had a, you know, very broad. I still listen to and talk to, you know, Father Gary Thomas. I listened to interviews with him, Father Carlos Martin, Father Stephen Lampert, you know, all these Catholic exorcists, because that is my belief, that is my religion, you know, and I watched them and I studied them. I read their books, you know, and I'm like, wow, you know, I didn't think of that. And that makes sense now, because that connects to this. You know, so I'm still learning. I mean, I don't know everything, and I don't profess to know everything. But what I do know, I would like to share with people. You know, Heather and I, this is why we want to do public speaking. You know, but things have changed. The Warrens used to do a lot of colleges and universities, and it's been hard. I've done some, but it's hard to get in there now. You know,
it's very difficult
to get in there now. You know, libraries, at least in Connecticut. I've been all over Connecticut, but you know, there's 169 towns in cities in Connecticut. So each town and city has a library. I've probably only done less than 50% of those over the last. I've been lecturing for about 25 years. You know, so I'm always, you know, I have a page on the library consortium, which is like a hub that connects all the
Right.
libraries. And I have a page built, and I get a lot of inquiries from libraries, and I send them out also in email form. But, Heather and I, we're looking, to do some lectures, say in Florida, maybe at some of these lighthouses that, are alleged to be haunted. I say alleged because I don't know if we can prove it, but, I'm like, would there be an interest? Now, I'm a lighthouse lover. I love lighthouse. I said, well, if they're haunted, that's a bonus for me.
Absolutely,
but, maybe as a fundraiser event, we come out and give a talk about this subject in general, and of course about the lighthouse. So
there's always people. Yeah, and I think it's really a service. What you guys are doing is important work. The Warrens, what they did, they changed the social consciousness of the whole planet with their work and gave it validity. And that, in their generation, they helped people realize that they weren't crazy and they weren't alone. Talk about spiritual warriors. So I think, regardless of people's judgments and their values about whether they think something is real or not, I think it's more important now than ever that we listen to each other. And so I just really appreciate having me on the show and listening to my information about the project.
Oh, it's a fascinating topic. Like I said, I know Heather and I both were looking forward to having you on because
I appreciate it.
And I'm going to talk to you offline within the next couple of days too, if you don't mind.
Great. Yeah, I'd love that. Yeah.
I have more questions, but we probably more questions than we have time for. And I want to shut up because Heather's giving me that Joe's soapbox thing again.
I really am hoping to make some connections with a couple of individuals. One of them is Dr. Emery Smith. I don't know if you folks are familiar with him, but
I don't think so.
He's former Air Force. He's been on Blind Frog Ranch, and he's a medical doctor, and he has a lot of experience with multidimensional work that he was involved with in his time in the military. And I'd also, there's just a lot of people out there that I'm hoping that at some point we can at least have a conversation. In fact, one of them is John D'Souza. He is the gentleman that was the FBI agent who was handling the X-Files. He was the whole basis for the first season of X-Files. I would love to talk to him. He talks a lot about multidimensional reality and how the FBI has actually investigated cases of multidimensional beings. So I'm hoping to reach out to him and have a conversation. The more the merrier, I think.
What do we got in the comments, Heather? I haven't really been looking.
No, they've been quiet.
Everybody's bored, I think.
They're riveted.
I've been talking too much.
No, that's what podcasts are for, except for me.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might want to throw out there.
Hey, Steph. I see Stephanie joined. If she's still with us.
Yep.
Jay's still there. Jay's a solid fan.
Yep. I actually have him on the show in April.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah. He did tell me you reached out to him. Thank you. That's a fascinating story. I'm going to be looking more into that. We've been talking over the last few days, and they'd like me to come back up and look more into that now. I haven't been to the home in probably about 16 years or so. But that home, definitely at that time, it's a case I worked on with Lorraine.
What was it? Which case?
The Enfield, Connecticut home.
The Enfield haunting. Yeah, that's legendary.
Yeah, I mean, and I got to make the distinction because when you say Enfield haunting, some people think we're talking about England, the Enfield poltergeist. This is Enfield, Connecticut. This is a case I worked on back in 2007, 2008. Involving their young children. Well, the twins are 18 years old now. I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting old.
Did they ever see the Hatman or have any events like that? The Grinner or the Hag there?
There was dark figures and dark shadows seen in the home multiple times, but if Jay's listening, maybe he could hop in there. I don't know if they actually with a hat. But if he's on, Jay, please type in your comments. But I'll keep you posted on what I find.
That would be great. And so again, I just appreciate you having me on the show. I'm sorry I don't have more notes or something in front of me.
Oh, well, we could definitely have you back on again when you get some more data.
Well, thank you.
I'll help you in any way I can, Philomena. So
I appreciate it. Yeah.
He'll tell you he's going to help you, and then he's going to disappear.
No,
he's
I
busy.
don't disappear.
He's a busy guy.
If I disappear, that means I'm in the hospital, and then they make fun of me. Just say I'm faking.
Stay out of the hospital. Stay out of the hospital.
I'm here. Yeah,
it's only me. He ghosts.
No, that's not true. It's true, but I don't mean to. I'm sorry.
Him and Father need to have their own show. Him and Father Torres, those two.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought we talked about maybe having one, but Heather's laughing like, you don't have time for my show. I don't know how you do it. You've got what,
3 shows? 4
3 shows?
I have 3.
I don't know how you do it.
My Tuesday morning show, we're changing to an evening, and we're going to be doing like one-off shows with special editions with different panel topics.
Yeah.
See, the gentleman here said, I find the show fascinating. Back in the early days when the girls could talk, they talked about a man with teeth and a hat. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, I would love to speak to this gentleman. And yeah, God bless you, sir. I know exactly what you mean by that. It's a battle for your soul.
This family went through hell back then. Because we went through it with them. We actually had members of our team physically attacked and lifted off the ground. And I have video footage. I have the audio of it, but the camera was pointed somewhere else. And I have video footage of an entity of some kind in the home. So, yeah. So his story is very real, and I can vouch for it.
Well, and the thing that he just said about the girls describing the man with the teeth, that sounds like the Grinner. Mm-hmm. One of the other things that has been reported has been it's a child, either male or female, depending on the person experiencing it, but a child leading them down the hallway. It picked up a 235-pound woman and threw her 8 feet down the hall.
Yeah, we were all there.
Yeah,
that's amazing. That happened.
I have no doubt, because I know in my own experience, I got tossed like a hamburger, and I'm not a small woman.
I was picked up and thrown about 12 feet. I was 360 pounds.
Wow.
I was about 24, 25 years old. I was working on a case that Ed had sent me to, and I was thrown at least 10 or 12 feet against the wall. Actually, the drywall cracked it with my shoulder, and it was terrifying. I mean, I was young, didn't know too much. I had been doing it for a few years, but I never experienced something that violent. Something that, like I said, you can't wrap your head around that. And when I talk to my audience, I'm like, is anybody in this room, if that ever happened to you? I mean, people, I had one guy, I wasn't scared. I'm like, yeah, you're lying. Because I was terrified.
Once you've had an experience, you never doubt again.
Yeah.
And one of the things,
help somebody. So I got up, I dusted myself off, and I'm like, okay, to work.
Yeah. And one of the things I want to mention before we wrap up is that this is what I tell the parents, because I speak with a lot of parents that are saying, my kids are seeing these things. They're terrified. I'm terrified. What do I do? Again, I'm not an expert, but I can tell you, based on the data that we've gotten so far, there seems to be, and listen, these are just comfort measures perhaps, but it seems to help. This is what I tell the parents. In terms of the children, if there is a closet in their bedroom, block it at night. I don't know what it is with the whole stupid Monsters Inc. thing where they're popping out of the damn closet to scare kids, but that is a consistent pattern, either out of the closet or under the bed. So for the parents who are telling me that their kids are reporting multiple occurrences, I say block the closet door, just because that gives the kid some visual comfort. And then either a flashlight or one of those little dollar store lights that you put a battery in and it turns on, put that under the bed for ambient light. It, be bright enough to give the room some light, but it won't disturb the child. Because the frequency of light really seems to interfere with the negative manifestation of this phenomenon. So have light present. I always tell them, make sure that you leave that child's door open. Do not shut the bedroom doors at night. Leave a light on. And then music is really important. There's something called suffragio frequencies. Are you guys familiar with those?
I've heard the term, yeah.
So there is some actual neurological science that goes into the effect of suffragio frequencies on the human psyche and the human nervous system to help create different emotional states. For some reason, between 750 and 950 hertz, and you can find 12-hour reels of music on YouTube for free of just soothing nature sounds or whatever. But I always tell them, have some sort of music playing low enough that they can hear it, but not loud enough to keep anybody up. The vibrational frequency of music seems to also have a debilitating effect. And then, of course, prayer. I don't care what your flavor of grape juice is, but figure it out and pray with your kids and for your family before bedtime. And again, just comfort measures, folks, but the parents that I've spoken to that have applied that have had less manifestations of the negative paranormal, at least that's what they tell me. But of course, they're also, I always tell them, you need to address whatever issues are at home. If you have drugs, alcohol, or negative social stuff going on in your home, clean your home first, because all that crap you're doing is what's drawing that in, and the kids are paying for it. So I just want to mention that, because a lot of times people will play the victim and say, oh, I don't know what's going on. Or, yeah, well, if you're smoking crack and your house is filthy and you beat your kids, what do you think is going to happen? So to me, it's just kind of a common sense thing. You know, if you are having some serious activity, you need to examine what the hell you're doing and how you're living, because that definitely plays a role in what's happening with this phenomenon. Now, I'm sure that's not true for every phenomenon, like with what you've dealt with, Joe. But in terms of the Hatman, it does seem like either the site itself had severe trauma in the area, or there is something going on with the family and the social structure that draws these things in.
Yeah, the thing I say about common sense is the problem there is it's not very common anymore. You know,
It's
and to talk
really
about
not.
music and frequencies, I was taught to use Gregorian music, Gregorian chants.
Oh yeah, that's the best
that
right
works.
there.
And you don't have to blast it. You turn it out so you can barely even hear it. Leave it on all day.
Yeah,
It drives them
yeah,
nuts. They hate that.
yeah, absolutely.
I do it all the time in my house. That's probably why I'm pretty
Yeah,
okay
and
with it.
I just got a message from somebody named Sarah Foreign, and I just wanted to let people know that Heather is recording this episode. It will be available for replay. So if you've only caught the tail end of the broadcast, you know, you can watch it in full once she posts it on her social media account.
Yep. Yeah. Give me a couple days, because I just started a new job. Usually I do it in 24 hours, but I got to be back at work tomorrow morning. So it'll be tomorrow or by Friday at the latest. And I will also be sharing the surveys, because we do have 2 surveys, one Hatman survey,
Yes.
one paranormal experience survey without Hatman encounters, to kind of create a control group.
Yes, we want to see the comparison of activity, how it's similar and how it's different. Yeah, I've also listed that on Reddit. I'm going to make another TikTok video about that and see if we can get more people in, because the more people that share the data, the better off we all are, you know.
Yep. So I'll make sure I get those on all of our pages.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll send you a link.
Along with the pictures. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I absolutely will. Yep.
I'm fascinated.
Yep. Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to you, Joe.
Yeah, and before we do all of our closing stuff, just let everybody know where they can find your different projects and what you're doing.
Okay. So Project Umbra, you can find me on YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook. As I said, I'm preparing new videos with information that we've gleaned from the survey, information that we've gleaned from the research. We've been in a little bit of a reorganization mode, but we will be releasing new videos, and that's where you can find our content. So it's Project Umbra on TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook. And I also have links for the survey there for both the paranormal and the Hatman survey. And I'm very open to other researchers talking with me and interacting, and we just really want to
Collaboration.
Collaboration. Yeah, absolutely. Collaboration, not competition. So collaboration, we all get ahead.
Exactly. So anything else, Joe?
No, I think I've talked enough.
Okay.
I promise.
I
We
can
only have
listen to you all day, Joe.
We only have 2 minutes. But yeah, thank you everyone for watching tonight. Don't forget you can follow us on Facebook at Passport to the Paranormal. And I will have the replay. I'll share the links on that page, as well as I'll also have it on my YouTube channel, which is Heather Leigh PhD. You can catch it there. And then you can catch us live every other Wednesday on Passport to the Paranormal, Parapost Network, and Parallax TV #1. All 3 of them are on Facebook. And we return in 2 weeks with Jeff Schlachter as our guest. We are going to be talking about disproving, and I can't stand the word, but I'll say it, debunking. I don't like that word.
It's overused.
And it wasn't even a word until Ghost Hunters came on. It was disproving
Exposing
up until Ghost Hunters came on. But yeah, so essentially how to disprove evidence and weed out the frauds from the actual evidence. And sorry you guys missed it, but we did not have Joe's Soapbox tonight. So we will have that in 2 weeks, I'm sure.
One thing about these, what they call frauds and fakers, and I don't have a problem with it if you at least put up a disclosure, said this is for entertainment purposes. The problem where I have it is when you start affecting people, when you say, oh, your dead grandmother's coming through or something, when they know they're full of shit, excuse my French. That's where I have a problem with it, and that's wrong. It's very wrong, because now you're playing with people's emotions. And I just heard a story recently, I don't know if it's actually true, but I heard it from a credible source that there was a suicide recently based on some false information like that.
Yep.
That's terrible.
But it's
not the first time it's happened.
If you're messing with somebody to the point where now they've gone and hurt themselves, or worse, or hurt someone else, wow. All right, is this what we've become? I mean, and the thing is, the serious people like us that are really trying to help and educate people, we get drowned out by this big noise of all these, YouTubers and everything. I just think it's wrong,
No.
I mean, I know everybody
like everything else.
Yeah, everybody jokes about the Florida man, but a couple years ago, there was a case here in Florida where the mom tried to kill her son. And when asked why, she said that a paranormal team told her that her son was possessed by a demon and she had to exorcise the demon, and that's the only way she knew how. So it happens more often.
I didn't hear that one, but Jesus, Mary, Joseph.
Yeah. That's why I'm on this big push that paranormal teams need to be licensed, insured, and registered somehow. So that way people know they're getting a legitimate team, not just a ghost hunter.
No problem with that, but
absolutely.
You're talking about licensed by the state or something like that?
It's no different than being a doctor. You go to the state, you let them know who you are, you show your credentials, and then the state creates a database that says these people can help with the paranormal because you have,
I'd say about 90% of the clowns out there wouldn't get certified.
No, and that's what we need. And I know people, I get hate mail for that one, but I truly do believe that, and Florida, and there's a couple other states that are getting ready to start enlisting laws against paranormal research and ghost hunting.
Because folks have to have accountability. Yeah, people get hurt.
And they don't. My team, we won't do residentials right now.
Yeah, well, how many times you get a call? ABC Paranormal was here, and they said I have a demon in my house, and they left saying we can't help you. It's over our heads. Well, no shit, Sherlock.
Yeah.
And I know we're going over time, but it's not even just that. It's, I've talked to several people who like the term client carries legal repercussions.
Yes.
The term investigator carries legal repercussions, because what are you investigating? Are you certified to be an investigator? Are you, that's why you never hear me say I always say researcher. And people
that's what I say too.
We won't take a residential case just because of that, because there's too many legal aspects.
Well, you really do have to be careful.
Well, you do, but I tell people the last thing you want to do is load up the mystery machine with all your equipment and your cat balls and all this and run to the house. I've helped the last 3 cases I've worked on in Connecticut. I've helped them over the phone. I never even went to the house. and I check
Sometimes
in with
that's
them
all
every
people
week or
need.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of it's psychosomatic. Because I'll say, how
Mhm.
many of these TV shows do you watch? How many of these YouTube
Mhm.
channels do you watch? And most of them like, oh, I love them. I said, stop investigating your own house, because
Yeah.
the mind is a powerful thing. When you're looking for something hard enough, you're going to find it. It's not really
Yeah.
going to be there, but up here it is.
Yep.
You know, and so you
Yeah.
don't need to run to the house and set up all this fancy equipment. Why?
Mhm.
If
Well,
you
and
can
too,
follow them
it's
and, sit at their, if you go there, sit at the table with coffee and pound cake and just see
yeah.
what's going on. What do you think's
Yeah.
happened? When did this all start? You've lived here 30 years, but it started 3 years ago. Well, what happened 3 years ago? COVID. You got to ask the questions, and sometimes a question leads to 10 more, but you have to
Right.
know the questions to ask. Not just
Right.
say,
And
here,
you
go
need
to the
that.
hotel for the night. Let me have your house. And, oh, God.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's the human connection. Because
Yep.
that's really what it is it's ministering in service to others, because people have gone through something. They need to talk. They need to air that out a little bit in order to process their own experience. And that is something that I've really noticed on TikTok, especially in the couple of years that I've been doing this on TikTok, is that 80% of the people that I've spoken to on the phone who have said, listen, I've seen the Hatman. I've got to talk to somebody. I've had to talk a few people down cliffs because they were so freaked out. And you've got 100 million bozos on TikTok that are all, I'm an expert demon hunter and I can solve all the evil in the world. You've got all this crap going on.
Yep.
And unfortunately, people do fall for it. And half the time, they just need somebody to talk to for a few minutes.
Mhm.
You're
Yep.
having some experiences, but, there could be other reasons for that. So
Mhm.
it's human connection.
It's getting out of control, though. I mean, I recently,
It really is.
for my blog post, if it's not a photo I've taken, I use CGI and AI created images. Just
That's
kind
what I
of
do
just
too.
add to the blog, so that way it's not just something that I've stolen from someone or anyone else can claim credit to it. It's something that I've had put together, and people have commented on my photos. Like, I'll have a photo, an image of a cemetery. And if you look at it close enough, you can tell it's CGI created, but far enough away, it looks like a real cemetery. And I've had people comment, I'm a psychic, and there's something evil hiding behind the third tombstone to the right. And it's like, okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of
It's
fake psychics out there too.
computer generated, but sure.
let's all go to this abandoned building and get scared and run away.
Right. Right.
You
and
don't
it's
run
all
away, you go after it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah.
They know who they are. They should be embarrassed.
They know
I
who
don't
they
run
are.
away. I yell at them if they hurt me. They know better than to.
There's no reason to be fear, because faith and fear can't coexist. If you have faith,
Right.
there is no fear. Think about it. That's
Absolutely.
what I tell everybody.
Absolutely.
At this point, I'm too old and beat up to be running, so I'm like, all right, whatever. All right, I'll shut up.
Well,
We're
we've gone over by
our
7
time.
minutes, so sorry for the other networks that we're going a little over. But thank you for joining us, Philomena. We'll definitely have you on again.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you so much, folks.
Promise. I'll be
Have
in
a good
touch.
night. All right.
Bye.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you tomorrow, or call me when you get out of work. Just call me. I should be around tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks in advance.